Welcome back. Still tuned into Chartbusters here on CNBC-TV18. Well, Nifty continues to be in the green. It's the banking index which is seeing some pressure today. So that one is down 45 points. And if we talk about the Nifty pack, we do have some gains coming in for Bajaj Finserv. So that stock is up around 3% ONGC too is higher. Overnight, we did see some buying in the crude oil segment. And that's why that stock is up around 2.5%. But of course, lower volumes in the commodity markets as well. Hindalco also has surged to the day's high. So that stock is up around 2%. Bajaj Fin. So basically, Bajaj Twins are doing well in trade today. In the broader markets, we have Manappuram Finance, which is higher by 5%. There's REC and SAIL too. They are at the highs of the day, so up around 3.5 to 4%. So these stocks are doing really well. PSU banking names, they continue to do well. So we have something like a PNB. There is something like Union Bank as well. Both of them higher in trade today. And from the broader markets, also RBL Bank, that has been an outperformer in the last couple of trading sessions. And today as well, it is higher. So this week, RBL Bank is up to 20% in trade. So yes, good gains for RBL Bank. They continue. The stock higher by around 20-odd%. But as we draw to a close on 2022, global inflation and subsequent interest rate hikes by most global central banks was the key highlight for markets all around the globe. Latha wraps up the year. That was.
The year 2022 has entered the record books for the two I's, interest rates and inflation. The United States saw the highest inflation in 40 years in 2022, while the Eurozone is seeing the highest inflation since the EU and the Euro were created. Both regions saw several months of near or over 10% inflation in 2022. Looking back, it's surprising why advanced economy central banks missed the price surge. Since March 2020, the US Fed had expanded its balance sheet from $4 trillion to $8.97 trillion at its peak in March 2022. Likewise, the European Central Bank expanded its money supply from $5 trillion to $10 trillion over the same period. This hugely excessive money supply was chasing fewer goods thanks to COVID dislocations and finally the Russia-Ukraine war, which led to a drastic fall in the supply, especially of wheat and gas, for a while. The Fed was the first to pivot. On November 29, 2021, Jerome Powell, for the first time, dropped the word transitory in his description of inflation. What followed was the fastest ever rate hikes in the history of the United States, Europe, and indeed most countries. The US Fed, starting in March, has raised rates by a cumulative 425 basis points this year to 4.25 to 4.5% by December. The ECB, European Central Bank, wasn't far behind in raising rates. It has raised rates 4 times by a cumulative 250 basis points. The Bank of England raised rates by 325 basis points, divided over 8 hikes, although it began hiking in 2021 itself. 2022's legacy to economic literature was the word pivot. Almost every central bank was caught napping on inflation and had to take a 180-degree change or a pivot from their dovish stance. The US Fed pivoted in November 2021. Like I told you, the latest to pivot is probably the Bank of Japan, which raised its cap on the 10-year yields from 0.25% to 0.5%. Back home, too, inflation was a headache, but not quite as ugly as it was in the developed Western economies. It stayed outside or above the mandated 2 to 6% zone in which CPI has to stay. So this forced the RBI to write to the government explaining why the mandate wasn't met. The letter, unfortunately, wasn't made public. Inflation apart, the Indian economy had a good 2022. At likely 6.9% growth rate for 2022, India was one of the fastest growing large economies. Growth was reflected in the robust demand for credit growth, as you can see, 7.5 to 17.5% over the year. The steady rise in GST collections and direct tax collections is another proof. And now these taxes look set to surpass budget targets by a good measure. The worries were the twin deficits. While fiscal deficit at 6.4% for the central government and 2.6% for the states is the known devil, the one that sneaked up was the rise in current account deficit triggered by a fall in exports, thanks to the global slowdown. Of course, crude prices was another reason. The rupee, therefore, fell around 10% in 2022. Now, if the I words, inflation and interest rates, dominated mindspace in 2022, the R word may dominate 2023. Recession, shallow or deep, is expected to hit the United States and Europe. The IMF forecasts global growth to slow from 6% in 2021 to 3.2% in 2022 and to 2.7% in 2023. At 2.7, it would be the weakest since 2001, except for the global financial crisis and the COVID-19 pandemic years. As a result, India's growth is also seen slipping to around 6% in 2023, but it may still be one of the fastest growing large economies. Now, that's the bright side. The dark side could be continued weakness in rural demand, lethargic private sector capex, and continued high fiscal deficit. Well, I began by saying 2022 is the year of the two I's, inflation and interest rates. 2023 may be the year of R, or recession, harsh or mild. But ultimately, everything depends on the three C's: crude, COVID, and climate.
Interesting story there, Latha, and very well told. You spoke about the I and the R for India in 2023. The only thing I'll be watching out for, India's resilience. With that, we'll wrap up on this edition of Chartbusters. Hope you have a very happy 2023.